back with all of you today. It's a blessing to see people that I haven't seen in a long time, and it's a blessing to be here. So I wanted to share something. I really truly believe God is working with our church, and it's because I'm seeing things happen. It was last month I mentioned to Robert, I said, Robert, one of our elders, Robert, he's not, where is he? Is he hiding? Okay. I said, Robert, I really would like to focus prayer meeting on prayer. Because oftentimes we come to prayer meeting and it's all about the Bible study. And we don't spend time praying, at least when I was here. And that was my bad. And so I told him, I really would like to. So we've been spending more time on prayer. When we come together for prayer meeting, we might pray for half an hour and Bible study for 15. So if you're interested in prayer, if you're interested in actually Elijah, when he made the invitation last week, I was like, yes, that's what we need. If anyone would like to join the train of prayer, I don't know, get on board. The more prayer, the better. And God is changing lives. He's touching hearts. Today we are continuing our series, Storms That Strengthen. And we're looking at how friendships are key in our spiritual walk. How friendships are necessary when it comes to focusing on what matters most in our life. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Father in heaven, Lord, as we open your word today, I pray that you can speak to us. That the words that I utter, though they may be imperfect, Lord, that you can perfect whatever is heard. Thank you in Jesus' name. So we've been looking at this image a lot. I'm going to be going through a little summary of what we've been looking at so far. We have been talking about what matters most in our life, and that is the heart issues. Spirituality, we said spirituality is about what matters most. The things under the waterline, the heart, what's going on in my life personally, the spiritual matters. We've been talking about that. And we looked at a parable in the Bible of the sower and the seeds, and we saw the different soils, and we looked at them as different approaches to life. I'm just going to go through them really quick. We saw the smooth soil that is the busy life. Is our life so busy we don't have time that has become hardened? The birds come and eat. The soil that was not deep enough, the sun was able to destroy that seed, and that's the life based on emotion result. You see this seed springing up quickly, and then it dies quickly. And then we saw the ground, the thorny soil, the ones with the thorns in them, and we see that the cares of life, we talked about the pursuit of wealth that choke out what matters most in our life. And then we talked about the good soil and how the good soil provides, it's a place that allows for growth. And we're going to be talking about that good soil today. And we're going to be comparing that good soil to how friendships can help us in that being a part of that good soil. So we did say that as we go through life, we need to keep in mind that everyone around us, wherever we go, people are going through something. They are human beings like I am. When I look here in church, if I ever get into a fight with someone, the way that I can return to that is remember that they're my brother, they're my sister, that they were created in God's image, and there's no reason for us to be like that. We are on a spiritual journey. Spirituality is a journey. It's not about a destination. We've been talking about this, sharing about this. And one of the things that we brought up in this journey is that we will face difficulties. We will face trials. We will wait in the waiting room sometimes. And when those crises comes up, we looked at this Chinese word, the two characters. One means danger and the other means opportunity. We ask the question, when we come into a crisis in our life, whether it be the sun that shines on us, the sun that kills the plant, or if the bird comes and tries to steal our life away, those difficulties, those crises, are we leaning on the side of danger or are we leaning on the side of opportunity and growth? And there's a story that I shared, actually this verse, I'm going to read it first in Romans. God talks about this in His Word. He says, we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, those who are called according to His purpose. Are you called according to His purpose? We're all called. We all have a purpose. But that purpose is based in remembering who we are. Remembering who we are. Who are we? We're children of God. Christ is the external and the internal force that is stronger than any storm in our life. Now, I wanted to go to this little story because I thought it was important, and it really goes with what we're talking about today. Remember the story of Dumbo, the little movie? I never watched the whole thing, but I remember this. There is this little part where Timothy, the little mouse, befriends Dumbo. And they become friends, and they figure things out, and Timothy gives some words of hope. He lifts his friend up when something happens. They find themselves in a tree one morning, right? He's up and he's like, how did I get up here? And Timothy realizes and he says the following. He says, the very thing that held you down, those very things are going to carry you up. It's like crisis. Are you going to let those things take you down? Those ears, the big long ears, or are you going to let them carry you? Are you going to look to God for the source of your strength in the storm? So today we are looking at, we're going to be continuing, this is a funny picture. So last time I was with you guys, we talked about the tools that we need to be able to focus on what matters most. And one of those tools was do what matters most. Do what is necessary. That means clean out your life. Take time with God. Go to Him and say, Lord, look, my life is cluttered. I have a whole bunch of stuff in my closet of my life. I need you to help me figure out what matters most and help me to get rid of what I don't need. And I think that's part of what we're talking about. When we're talking about the 21 days of prayer, we're talking about, God, get the sin out of my life I don't need it. It's impeding my spiritual journey with you. It's keeping me from doing what I need to do, what matters most. Do whatever work is necessary in your life. That was the first tool. The second tool we looked at when we were together is make use of the resource that God provides. And one of those resources was a safe place. The last time we were together, we talked about that safe place. And that safe place is in time. When you plant a seed, it has to be in a safe place. We need to be in a safe place in our life. We talked about Sabbath and how Sabbath is that safe place in time that God gives us to grow, to rest. That safe place. The second thing that we're looking at, the second part of this tool number 2, is a fertile environment. If you're going to plant a seed, you need not only a safe place, but you need a fertile environment. And what does a fertile environment look like? A fertile environment denotes soil that has had unnecessary rocks and weeds taken away, right? Where the soil has been deeply cultivated and developed, and plenty of moisture made available to the seedlings to grow. It is the responsibility, we see it as a responsibility of the farmer. God, it is His responsibility to make sure that we are in that environment. Now, I want to share. Welcome to my backyard. I don't know if you guys remember, some of you have been here long enough to remember my chronicles of my backyard. This is how it looked like, or actually it didn't look like this, and this is some work already be done. When we first got to our house, when we bought the house, we were excited. We went into the house, and the kids finally had a backyard, right? It had been about a year that we had been in the apartment. They didn't have any backyard to play in, but now they had a backyard. So we all went to the backyard, and they ran out into the grass, and oh, this is awesome. Oh, actually, the weeds. It wasn't grass yet. And then they were all awesome running around. And then we came back. We were walking around, and then we came back, and we stepped on the cement, and crunch, crunch, crunch. We looked at our shoes, and they were full of goat heads. I was like, oh no, what did I get myself into? I didn't even check to see if this house had goat heads. And now here we are with this backyard that our kids are going to have to wear shoes in to play in, because they're going to get stickers in their feet. And so after a couple months of looking into options of how to get rid of those, I quoted out and said, how much does it cost to get rid of it was pretty expensive. So fortunately, I had a friend, a companion with me that was living with us at the time. It was my father-in-law. Some of you know him as Papa Chin. Others know him as Severiano. But he is Papa Chin to us at home. And we spent some time. The first thing we had to do was mark off the territory. You can see that the stakes are there, marking off the territory that we are going to plant grass. So what we did is we started, we marked it off. We put down bricks. So now we know the area that we're going to cover. So we marked off another area. We said, we're going to just do this area right here. We're going to try growing grass in this front area. And so I put on the ground clear. I killed it all, everything I killed. And then I dug everything up, and we used a filter, a 1/4-inch filter, fencing to filter out all the rocks and the weeds, and we were left with finer ground, finer dirt. And then I went to the store and got some dirt that was for planting dirt, and I mixed it in. And then we planted the seeds, and it said 14 days, right? 14. I'm like, oh, is this going to grow? And I even got the specific dirt that says will hold more moisture. This is very important. Your seeds, if you ever plant seeds, they have to be in moist environment. This is one of the points that I'm making today. So after 10 days, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I saw like this green little haze on top. I'm like, wait a minute. Is that grass? And I look down, and I see the grass starting to come up. And I'm so excited, and so I take a picture, and this is a picture of it. And, time went by, and we finally were able to complete the yard. And it was a transformation. What a difference. No thorns. Now, to tell you the truth, we did have to go back out there after planting and make sure that the weeds are, because weeds come in every now and then. A weed will come and say, hey, what's that? Right? But pretty much the grass does pretty well right now. It does okay. Every now and then we'll find something. But you know what? It took some time to get rid of the rocks, the weeds, to cultivate the soil, to make sure that the soil was moist enough. And when it comes to our spiritual life, my friends, we need to ask the question, is our life an environment that is fertile to growth? Before we can answer that question, it is necessary to understand what a fertile environment requires. And that's my 3 points for today. A place where adequate moisture, we talked about moisture, a place cleaned of weeds, we clean them up, and a place that points to sunlight. There are some spots in my lawn, if you go back, you can see there you're looking at it on this side, it's a little dark. I didn't put that in there. That's missing grass because the sun doesn't reach there. It's very important. Having enough sun. First point we're going to make, moisture. What is moisture and how How does that apply in our spiritual life? Well, let me explain. When you plant a seed, it is hard. It has an outer crust. It has an outer a shell, I guess you could say. And essentially, what moisture does is it brings that seed back to life. It starts, we call it imbibation. I know that's kind of a funny word, imbibation. It's like beber agua, imbibation. I know, it's like Spanglish, right? Imbibation. You get me, I don't know, some might get me here, but we say comedation, like to eat. Yeah, okay. So silly ways of mixing Spanish and English. But imbibation is the process of the water getting through to the seed to remind the seed, you are a seed and you have a purpose. Your purpose is to grow and reproduce more seeds, more fruit. That is your purpose. And so now, when we look at that, we ask the question, could it be that we as Christians have forgotten who we are? Have we forgotten our identity? Have we forgotten that it is our purpose that we are seeds planted by God to produce fruit, to produce more seeds? If we look around us in the world that we live in today, we'll see that our identity is constantly being attacked. Who we are, God's children, created in His image, that's always being attacked. Let me start with this. I was listening to a radio program, it was a Christian radio program, and they were talking about how our children from ages 6 to 8, one of the highest, most concerns that they have is body autonomy. You say, what's a body autonomy? Body autonomy, that's like, am I too fat? Or do I look, they're like looking at their body. They're worried about their body. Okay, 6 to 8, that's crazy. Also, another statistic, they found that 80% of 10-year-olds have already gone on a diet. Does that make sense? No. They're worried about their image, their identity, who they are. And they in this study, they also found that, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone here, okay? They found that the main source of this, who it was coming from, was the mother. Well, moms, oh, do I look too fat? I need to lose weight. I need to do my hair. I need to do my nails, right? All of these things. Women are concerned about how they look, and that's good. I'm happy that they're concerned about what they look like. Because, it's nice to be with someone that cares about themselves. But when it's so much so that it affects the children, and it's not intended, this is as innocent as it could be. But in the world that we live, everyone's like, okay, I got to make sure, it's all about image, right? It's all about Facebook and Instagram and whatever I might be behind, right? I'm way behind, right? Those are all old people's apps, right? What are the new ones? Twitter? No, Twitter. Well, there's a whole bunch. TikTok, right? I'm not trying to promote any of those guys, okay? Just this is what we have in the world around us. Everyone's trying to look good. And as innocent as it might seem, it is affecting our children. It's affecting them. It's attacking them, who they are. Another thing that we find in attacking our identity as Christians in that process of moisture is this. Identity. Who created us? Where do we come from? I know this is a silly one, right? Evolution is taught in the schools, in the public schools. And it's so easy to say it's taught in our schools because we look at the schools and we say, well, they're using our money to pay for that, right? And so we tend to say our school, but when you look at the values that are being taught in these schools, in the government schools, they don't match up with Christian values. Evolution is not something the Bible teaches. In fact, evolution will degrade your view of who you are. Evolution says you're just another animal. Do whatever you want. You're just a clump of cells. In the end, what does that do with your purpose in life? The theory of evolution that's what it says. And by the way, we do. I don't know if you guys know. You probably most of you do know that we have an Adventist school, a Christian school, just up the road. It's called Crestview. And if you have any children or know of any children that need that environment, that you're trying to get them out of that environment of the public school system so that they can grow with other children socially and spiritually, where teachers can talk to their kids about God and kids can say, what do angels look like? Why did God create us? These are questions that I've been answering in the school. Kids have been asking in the 6th to 8th grade. They're asking these questions, and we're able to talk to them about these things. By the way, Christy, I think they're still accepting registration. So if you know of anyone, we have the principal. She's here. You can talk to her today. In Genesis 1:26 it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and they will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and the livestock, all the earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth.'" This is what God's intention was. We're not just another animal. We're not just a clump of cells. We are created in God's image. That is who we are. That is part of our identity. And friends, our identity, the view we have of our identity affects the way that we live our lives. It affects the way we think. It affects the way we value things. It affects the way we value life itself. The Bible tells us how valuable life is. There are many verses in the Bible that talk about how God has how he is actively involved in the creation of us in the womb. This is one verse. It says, "Did not he who made me in the womb make him, and the same one fashion us in the womb?" This is Job. Talking about how God is involved in making us, creating us. Another attack that we see taking place is on the unborn. It's the only logical thing, if you don't believe in God, to think human beings are just another animal instead of created in the image of God. It makes sense to attack the unborn if they are just seen as a clump of cells instead of a miracle of life. But the Bible says otherwise. We see the Bible says that we are a miracle. Know that the Lord himself is God. It is he who has made us and not we ourselves. We haven't made ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Remember that. We're going to come back to the sheep part. Another passage that we can find is in Jeremiah. We see how God speaks to Jeremiah. He said, I'm sorry, I'll go back to Psalms. I had the wrong notes there. We'll get to Jeremiah. This is what it said. "I will praise you because I have been remarkably and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know this very well." We can see that in this passage specifically, that our view of who we are, the image we have of ourselves, the identity that we identify with, affects the way we worship. It says what? "I will praise you." Why? Because I am made wonderfully and beautifully in your image. It affects the way we worship. We know that Satan, if he can get us to doubt that, if he can get us to take our eyes off of God, if he can get us to doubt our identity in him, he can do anything to us. He can lead us into worship anything he wants, even ourselves. And isn't that what's been going on lately? Worship of self. I'm not going to say too much about this. You adults know what I'm talking about. Today's schools, they say you can be anything you want. That's what they told me when I was growing up in school too. You can be anything you want. You can be the president of the United States, anything. Oh yeah, cool. I want to be a bombero. I want to be a fireman. Now I'm putting out fires in church. No, I'm just kidding. uh, nowadays they say you can be anything you just whatever you feel like. If you feel like a tree, you're a tree. That's a little extreme, but I mean that's kind of where it's going, right? They're indoctrinating, leading children to question their identity. Instead of being grounded in the knowledge that we are created in the image of God, children are taught that their image is molded according to how they feel. However you feel, you just do what you feel. Satan continues to attack our identity because he knows that it will keep us from growing. If he can get us to forget that we are seeds created to produce more seeds, created to produce more fruit, then he has accomplished his purpose. And there is nothing else that he wants. I'm going to step on some toes. Sometime back, I spoke of the Laodicean church, and I called it the lazy boy church. It's a lazy boy church because they're comfortable. They don't want to be hot or cold. They want to be lukewarm. They want to be in the middle. They want to sit in their chair and watch their different preachers on TV, and they're comfortable, and they don't want to get up and move and do something about what's happening. Could it be that we have identified ourselves with certain ministries and certain preachers, and we are strongly tied to them, and when it comes to our life, we are not clear? When our identity should be in God. Have we forgotten that we are created in God's image? It's easy to do this. It's easy to forget. Satan is always trying to distract. You know that attacks not only come from externally, but they come internally. If Satan can attack us from within the home, from within the church, he will do it, whatever it might be. So in consideration of all these things we see in moisture and what's going on, we know that as Christians we need to have a biblical base. That's the first thing. We need to have a relationship with God. We need to have a biblical knowledge. We can't just have biblical knowledge. We have to have a relationship with God. Because you can know, Satan knows the Bible, right? But that doesn't mean he's saved. So, we need to have a biblical knowledge and a relationship with God. At the same time, God does seek to provide moisture in our lives by providing friendships that will help us remember who we are. Friendships that will say, you know what? Well, actually, we're going to talk about those friendships right now. People who help us grow, people who remind us of who we are. For example, having a prayer partner that you can call every week, or maybe see that person once a week and be able to pray with them and spend time with them. And iron sharpens iron, we'll get there. Prayer partners, making sure that we have that. And then that was. I know we spend a lot of time on moisture, right? That's very important. Our identity. Remembering who we are, that we are seeds here to produce fruit. And number 2, a place clean of weeds. We need to have friends that will help look at our life and say, hey, you know what? You're kind of going down the wrong way. Let's come back. People that will hold us accountable. People that will make sure that we are taking out the weeds in our life. When I was there, I remember when we were still trying to grow the grass. We get up early every morning with the boys, and we get on our hands and knees, and we say, okay, you see a weed, you pull it out. You see a weed, pull it out. And we pulled out the weeds. Every morning we were pulling out weeds, pulling out weeds. We need friends that will get on their hands and knees with us and help us pull out those weeds. Some weeds are really hard to pull. Some things in our life, some sins in our life, we don't want to share. We don't want people to know that I'm going through that. We don't want to be embarrassed. But we need those friends. Another thing that we see here is an environment that is fertile, is a place that points to sunlight. You have seen the sunflowers, right? They've come out. Have you any of you driven out towards East Mountain? If you're driving out there in the country, you will see the sunflowers, and they seek the sun. Do we have friends that point us to God, or look at our life and say, you know what? You are okay here, 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 but there's this one area. I think you need more God in that life, in that part of your life. It's very important. It's very unfortunate that as we look at around us, we look at the church, and I see a lot of faces here that have been coming for some time, at least a year, 2 years. We're starting to come back. The pandemic really hurt the church, because it would almost seem like the pandemic almost added to those lazy boy Christians. It's like, oh, I don't need to go to church. The pandemic's out there. I'm just going to stay home, and I know my channels. I know where to go. I'll just sit here and watch. Have you ever heard the term solo Christian? Does that even make sense? A solo Christian. That doesn't make sense, does it? Why? When you think of Christians, you can't think of a journey that is taken alone. A solo Christian, I guess, would say like, "Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm at home. I got my TV, and I got my preachers, and I'll send my offering online or whatever, and my tithe, and I'll worship God. I do pretty good at home." There are several reasons why a born-again believer should never consider solo life. The reasons we've already mentioned, the encouragement. You don't have that encouragement. You don't have the accountability. You don't have people pointing you to God. You don't have a life that is, and the life that is solo is basically a life that goes unchecked. No one's there to check, hey, how are you doing in your pride, your flaws, the greed, envy, anger. Are you becoming judgmental? Because you're not around people. Now you start to point, oh, they're doing this wrong, they're doing that wrong. Often, life goes unchecked. The spiritual oversight is neglected. I knew of this man who he would, every now and then he'd call the local conference. And he would call them up and say, hey, you know what, I'm an Adventist and I'm looking for an Adventist pastor in the area. Could you help me out? I live in such and such a place. I need help. I want a Bible, or, it was the same, it was maybe a different story, but same kind of thing. He wanted to contact the pastor. So the conference would pick up and they would look where, okay, he's at this pastor and this pastor there. They reach out to those pastors and they would say, okay, we have this person. Can you reach out to them? So they reach out. And this guy, you can see, he's like, I don't know if this is the pastor or if it's the guy himself. It could be either. Because basically it's like, this guy would call, or he would want to be called, just to start an argument with the pastor. to start, some controversial topic. Do you think? Maybe he thought he was holding the pastors accountable. I don't know. But when I think of being held accountable, I think of someone that loves me. I think of someone that cares for me. I think of someone that is doing it out of love and care, not because they want to put me in my place. Right? Another reason why we cannot be solo Christians, the Bible talks about loving what? One another. If you're by yourself, you cannot love one another. Love is not only a noun, but it's a verb. You have to take action. In the Bible, we see various places where it says that we need to take time to love one another, and we can't do that all alone. When we look at the Bible in the New Testament, we see several letters written telling the brothers and sisters, this is how you should live life with each other, loving each other, doing this with each other. You can't be solo Christians. The letters were read corporately. They were read for the whole church. It wasn't just like, hey, I found a letter. Here, you read it and text it to you. No, it was read for everyone. Everyone was hearing it. And then the body also, the Bible talks about, there's another point to make. You can't be a solo Christian. The Bible says that we are a part of one body, many parts. That means it says the finger can't just say, okay, I'm going to be myself, and I don't need the hand, right? The eye can't say to the leg, I don't need you. Or the leg can't say to the eye, that happened to me the other night. I got up for some reason, sometimes you get up and at night and it was like 1 a.m, and I went to go see, because sometimes the lights get left on. I don't know, the boys get up and they turn on the light. I'm like, what? I can't sleep with the light. So I went and turned off the light. And I was like, okay, it's dark. And so I'm doing this, right? I'm walking with my eyes closed, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get my bed. And then, boom, right there. Oh, and I said, oh. And it was like a bump immediately. I was like, it was right on the bone. And I was walking with my leg cannot say to my eyes, I don't need you. The church, we cannot say to each other, I don't need you. We need each other. We're all important. We're all valuable. Proverbs 27:17 says the following: as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We cannot be solo Christians. We must seek to sharpen and be sharpened by those that we surround ourselves with. Avoiding such connections weakens the solo Christian as well as the local body. Unfortunately, the pandemic, I said, added and contributed to this. Local churches often offer many opportunities in which to use our gifts to serve others for the glory of God. There's one more verse I want to share with you, and I want to close with this one. 1 Peter 5:8 says, be serious, be alert. Your adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion, looking for anyone he can devour. When you look at the context of this, you go back a couple verses to verse 2. It's an exhortation to the pastors, and this is for me, but I'm going to read it. It says, be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them. It doesn't say be a shepherd to that one sheep only. It says the flock. And this verse, this passage is talking about the sheep. We talked about how God considers us as sheep. He is our shepherd, the shepherd of shepherds. When you look at Spanish, the Spanish language, the word for shepherd is pastor. Pastor. The same we use, pastor. And the word for pastor is pastor. It's the same thing. The pastor of the sheep, the shepherd of the flock. And when we look at the situation of this flock and the sheep, we see that when lions come or when wolves come, they will not attack a flock that is healthy. And that's what we want. We want a healthy church. We want a church that when we see someone that is dragging along, we want to go back and we say, come on, guys, let's help them. Let's get them up. Let's pull them in. Let's put them in the middle. Let's start praying for them. Let's start caring on them. Let's start loving on them. Don't leave them behind. Because those ones that get left behind, that's the one the lion is looking for. That's the one the wolf is looking for. Looks for the weakest, the one that's injured. Have we done the work that we need to make sure that we are taking care of each other? The lion will attack in many different ways. He likes to stir up trouble, bitterness, disappointment, pride, and critical spirits to keep lone sheep away from the flock. Then he attacks them with discouragement, temptation, and deception to eliminate any heavenly treasure that loner could have stored up for himself. You know, we look forward to spending eternity with each other, right? But we got to start now. We got to start. The kingdom of God is not in heaven. It is at hand. It is here. It is in us. When Christ lives in my heart, I am an ambassador for him. I'm an ambassador for the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords of this earth. So God invites us, remember who you are. Surround yourself with friends that will help you be fruitful. Surround your friends that will remind you who you are, people that will help you. And you'll have to lower your guard a little. That will help you with those weeds in your life. Friendships that are fruitful, that will point you to God and say, look, let's walk this way because your back is to the sun. Let's walk towards God. And so today, as we think about this, I know that my sermon went a little longer today. But that's okay. Because we need to focus on what matters most in our lives. Let's finish today with our hymn as we sing today, our last hymn. Join us as we sing together.